Well, hello, everyone. It is Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock. I'm Jane Monreal, and you are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Glad to be back with you after. Thanks, Carlene. Back in the hot seat here this morning. Thank you, Nick Sturdivant, for holding it down, doing a little bit of a double shift here in the Impact Studio. Anyway, I want to get started right now with an update on a traffic situation because of a bit of a gas leak, and this affecting the morning commute for several hours. This is video from earlier where a gas leak was reported in the Matthews area, shutting down 485 both directions at East John Street due to the leak. At one time, no estimate on when the repair would be completed, but an alternate was provided. As you can see there, solid brake lights there through Matthews, and as you can imagine, for the morning commute, something we do not need at all. So hopefully you were able to call the boss or maybe turn back around and go home and work from home. Anyway, an update for you as we are just starting the stream here. Piedmont, from Piedmont Natural Gas, a third-party contractor unaffiliated with Piedmont Natural Gas, damaged a natural gas line while digging near the intersection of I-485 and East John Street. Piedmont crews turned off the gas. They are currently making repairs on the damaged line. So the company working to continue with local emergency responders now to secure that area to help ensure public safety, of course. So I-485 backups will continue as now Piedmont Gas releasing the latest update here on what happened. A third party unaffiliated with the company did damage a natural gas line there. So, wow, patience required this morning, getting your Tuesday morning started. But it does look like it's a beautiful day as the sun. that is literally the bright side as you make your way to and from work, hopefully. All right, back here now, Live Impact Studio. The White House holding a press briefing early this Tuesday morning. They started at 8:30. We want to roll the press briefing in its entirety, so we're going to start to roll that here now, live on Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy first 100 days. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the bipartisan Take It Down Act passed the House last night. This important legislation was championed and guided through Congress by our wonderful First Lady, Melania Trump, including through her direct advocacy on behalf of survivors during her passage, the passage efforts. The Take It Down Act criminalizes the publication of non-consensual intimate imagery and requires social media and similar websites to remove such content within 48 hours of notice from a victim. The First Lady thanks all those who voted in favor of this important legislation, and the President looks forward to signing it when it arrives on his desk. Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working. 345,000 jobs have already been added since the start of President Trump's term. Last month's jobs report saw nearly 100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and it was the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years. 9,000 manufacturing jobs have been added to the economy already. This is a sharp contrast to the 6,000 manufacturing jobs that were lost each month in the final 2 years of the Biden administration. The U.S. employment rate remains at historic lows. And thanks to President Trump, Americans are seeing price relief for the first time in years. The last inflation report showed the first consumer price decline since the COVID pandemic, a decrease in energy prices, and real average hourly wage growth. President Trump is delivering on his promises to lower costs for American families and businesses. Prices across the board for everyday goods have seen declines since this president was inaugurated. From airfare to used motor vehicles to prescription drugs, prices are dropping. In fact, last month's drop in the price of prescription drugs was the largest ever recorded. And after Joe Biden botched the response to the bird flu, President Trump and Secretary Rollins' aggressive plan have brought down wholesale egg prices more than 50% from Inauguration Day. President Trump ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy and fossil fuels and has restored American energy dominance. And Secretary Wright, Secretary Doug Burgum are working hard on that effort every single day. Oil and gas prices are now way down because of this bold approach. Gasoline prices down 7%. Energy prices are also down as well. The Department of Interior just announced a new offshore drilling policy that will boost oil production in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day. On the deregulation front, President Trump is committed to cutting senseless red tape, especially for America's small business owners who are the backbone of our economy. We know cutting regulation leads to lower costs and higher growth. The mass deregulation effort by this administration will help usher in the golden age of America, which is underway. Immediately upon taking office, President Trump blocked all of the unfinalized Biden-era rules, saving Americans more than $100 billion, or $2,100 per family of four over the next decade. And the president also launched a bold multi-agency effort to roll back existing federal regulations that drive up the cost of living on hardworking families. This effort is projected to yield significant cost savings in the coming months, including the EPA's rollback of tailpipe emission rules for light-duty and medium-duty vehicles and the Department of Transportation's latest corporate average fuel economy standards. These two efforts alone yield $755 billion in total savings, or more than $8,800 per family of four over the next decade. In total, the combined savings from all of these actions equal just over $935 billion, or nearly $11,000 in real savings per family of four per the coming decade. The press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign, and investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA in AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in AI infrastructure as well. All of these investment commitments are estimated to generate at least 451,000 new high-paying jobs for American workers and families. At this point, President Trump has secured more investments in the United States of America in 100 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years. President Trump is America's businessman in chief, and that's why these trillions of dollars in investments are flooding to our country. The business community is bullish on America because President Trump is back in charge. Tomorrow, the president will host CEOs and leaders from several companies that have made these investments to tout their historic commitments to our country and encourage others to follow suit. Under President Trump, there has never been a better time to invest in America. And the president finally said enough is enough and refused to allow America and our workers to be ripped off any longer on trade. President Trump implemented powerful tariffs to end the era of economic surrender and to rebalance America's trading agreements. More than 100 countries have already come to the table looking to offer more favorable terms for America and our people. There has never been a president who has created his own leverage like this president, and we are just getting started. Republicans in Congress are getting very close to passing President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which will include the largest tax cuts in American history, strong border security measures, major military advancements, dramatic deregulation, and common sense spending reforms. As President Trump has said before, the best is yet to come. For more on President Trump's economic successes so far and the plans ahead, I want to pass it off to our incredible Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who is here today, and we will open it up to questions. In our new media seat, we have Brendan Peterson, the financial services reporter for Punchbowl News. Punchbowl News covers power, people, and politics based in Washington, D.C., laser focus on Capitol Hill, the politics of legislating, founded in 2021, and it is the first newsletter that Capitol Hill and the White House reads every morning in the middle of the day and throughout the evening. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll start with you today.
Thanks so much for being here. I have a question for Secretary Bessent. On tariffs, the president said over the weekend that we are hoping that maybe tariff revenues could replace income tax. But we also keep hearing about the deals that the administration is pursuing. So my question is, what is the White House's ultimate objective here? Do you want to have long-term tariff revenue or deals that might reduce those tariffs?
I think it's a combination of both. So we're going to take in long-term tariff revenue. We put a process in place. We have 18 important trading relationships. We will be speaking to all of those partners, or at least 17 of them, over the next few weeks. Many of them have already come to Washington. What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all those immediately.
So you think that there is a role for significant tariff revenue in U.S. fiscal policy?
I think that it is something that got put away a long time ago, and I think that tariffs will bring back American manufacturing and generate substantial revenues.
On manufacturing, we've seen some pretty grisly surveys this month from the Philly Fed, which saw the biggest drop since May of 2020, and the Dallas Fed, similar plunging outlook poor shipping orders. What are American manufacturers not understanding about your push for onshoring in the U.S.?
Well, I think I was in the investment business 35 years, and I learned to ignore the survey data and look at the actual data, and the actual data has been quite good. The job data is good. Americans keep spending, and as Caroline said, we have these incredible commitments to bring manufacturing back on shore with record investment by domestic corporations and foreigners who want to come into the U.S.
Ouija.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. You recently said you've talked to your counterpart, but more about, quote, traditional things like financial stability. So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days that show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly, and even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
And they are saying you guys are not talking about it. So is that true?
Look, they have a different form of government. They're playing to a different audience. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty again of who's talking to whom. But as I said, I believe for the Chinese, these tariffs are unsustainable.
And very quickly, 2 days ago, you said you didn't know if President Trump had spoken to Xi Jinping. Do you know now?
Again, I would say Caroline and I have a lot of jobs around the White House. Running the switchboard isn't one of them.
Bloomberg, go ahead.
Secretary Bisson, thank you so much for being here this morning. You've talked about the importance of giving investors certainty when it comes to the market, yet the Trump administration is continuing to negotiate several complex trade deals in a very sort of compressed time frame. When do you expect you'll be able to give the market some certainty around those deals? Do you have a deadline? Is it the 90-day pause? What are we looking at here?
Good question. And I think one thing that has been a little disconcerting for the markets is, President Trump creates what I would call strategic uncertainty in the negotiations. So he is more concerned about getting the best possible trade deals for the American people. We had 4 years of bad deals for decades of unfair trading, and we are going to unwind those and make them fair. What we are doing is we've created a process. I think the aperture of uncertainty will be narrowing, and as we start moving forward announcing deals, then there will be certainty. But certainty is not necessarily a good thing in negotiating.
Mr. Secretary, last night there were reports on the administration sort of walking back a little bit on the auto tariffs. Can you sort of just elaborate on that decision there and what we can expect going forward, and why sort of the shift in those auto tariffs?
Well, President Trump has had meetings with both domestic and foreign auto producers, and he's committed to bringing back auto production to the U.S. So we want to give the automakers a path to do that quickly, efficiently, and create as many jobs as possible.
Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Secretary. Back on China, does the administration anticipate supply chain shocks or supply shocks coming now that cargo shipments from China are significantly down? And if so, are there plans in the process of how to address that?
I wouldn't think that we would have supply chain shocks, and I think retailers, they have managed their inventory in front of this. I speak to dozens of companies, sometimes daily, but definitely weekly, and they know that President Trump is committed to fair trade and have planned accordingly.
And then second question, can you outline the timeline for when you think some of these deals, particularly with your Asian countries like India, Japan, South Korea, you may have an announcement?
I'm glad you brought up our Asian trading partners and allies. They have been the most forthcoming in terms of doing the deals. As I mentioned, Vice President Vance was in India last week. I think that he and Modi made some very good progress, so I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together, and then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Andrea?
Secretary Bessent, just continuing on the path of the sort of like progress. You said yesterday, I think, that it was could happen as early as this week or possibly next week. Can you give us a bit of a timetable? And then I wanted to ask about South Korea specifically. They've said that they probably won't be able to make a comprehensive deal until early July because of their elections. Japan also has elections. And to what extent are domestic factors complicating your efforts? Canada just had an election. You know, are you seeing that you might have to think about delaying the 90 days?
Well, I would actually take the opposite tack, that I think from our talks that these governments actually want to have the framework of a trade deal done before they go into elections to show that they have successfully negotiated with the United States. So we are finding that they are actually much more keen to come to the table, get this done, and then go home and campaign on it.
Sean?
I'm sorry, did you have a comment on whether something can happen this week or next week? For a deal. So, you said yesterday.
Again, I think that we are very close on India. And in India, just a little inside baseball, India, in a funny way, is easier to negotiate with than many other countries because they have very high tariffs and lots of tariffs. So it's much easier to confront the direct tariffs when as we go through these unfair trade deals that have been put in over decades, that the non-tariff trade barriers can be much more insidious and also harder to detect. So a country like India, which has the posted and ready tariffs, it's much easier to negotiate with them. So I think the India negotiations are moving well.
Sean, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Secretary. So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon. And Secretary, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would also add that the bringing down the terrible Biden inflation has been a priority for the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and President Trump has done a great job of leading that since January 20th. Interest rates, mortgage rates are down, gasoline and energy prices are down. We're expecting the further decreases, and as Caroline said, the big tax on consumers that goes unnoticed is deregulation or regulation, and we are deregulating and bringing that down. So, from a household income point of view, we would expect real purchasing increases. We've seen them over the first 100 days, and we would expect that to accelerate. We are doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and deregulating. And the deregulation is a longer lead time, but I think by the third and fourth quarters, that's really going to kick in.
Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. A question for you and Secretary Bessent. We talk a lot about volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace, and the president has stated all along that he's more concerned about mainstream America, the American worker. You just talked about deregulation and this entire fair trade and reciprocals. What is your message to the American people in terms of letting them get through this disturbance and the outcome being greater and a greater good for the American worker, the American people, the American families?
I would say trust in President Trump. There's a reason he was reelected to this office. It's because of the historic success of his economic formula in the first term, and as I laid out at the beginning of the briefing and the Secretary has talked about and the President talks about every day, there's a proven formula that works. Massive deregulation, energy independence, and tax cuts, which are coming. And the Secretary is working very hard on that with our counterparts on Capitol Hill. If you want to talk about that, that's a huge deal to put more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. As for the fair trade deals the President is trying to negotiate, he's not just righting the wrong of the mess that he inherited from the past 4 years of the Biden administration. This is a mess that has been created for the past 4 decades that has sold out the middle class, that has moved jobs overseas. You think about our heartland, middle America, what towns used to look like, what they look like today. President Trump wants to restore the golden age, and it's a process to do that. And that process is underway, but he's put together a fantastic trade team. Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Jamieson Greer, all working incredibly hard on this effort 24/7. But tax cuts are coming, and that's key. And Mr. Secretary, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So it's really a three-legged stool in the economic policy. It's trade, it's tax, and it's deregulation. So we are in the midst of addressing, as Caroline said, these long-term trade imbalances. The tax bill is going much better than I would have thought when I took office on January 28th, and that's through President Trump's leadership. That Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune are united. Speaker Johnson, we had a very good meeting yesterday with somebody called the Big Six, NEC Director Kevin Hassett, myself, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, Committee Chairman Jason Smith, and Senator Crapo. And the tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis. And the other thing that I would note, and back to data, is that the Vanguard, one of the largest money management firms in America, said that over the past 100 days, 97% of Americans haven't done a trade, and in fact, individual investors have held tight while institutional investors have panicked. So individual investors trust, the investors trust President Trump.
Megan, in the back.
Thank you both. Can you detail for us exactly what we should expect as far as relief on the auto tariffs front? And then further, Mr. Secretary, should we expect other industries to also get relief the way we've now seen for auto and tech as well?
I'm not going to go into the details of the auto tariff relief, but I can tell you that it will go substantially toward reshoring American auto manufacturing. And again, the goal here is to bring back the high quality industrial jobs to the U.S. President Trump is interested in the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past. We don't need to necessarily have a booming textile industry like where I grew up again, but we do want to have precision manufacturing and bring that back. And another important, very important function of this that does not get talked about enough is national security. President Trump, his overriding concern and belief is that economic security is national security is economic security. And we saw during COVID that our supply chains got cut off. And we need to bring back a lot of those supply chains, whether it's in semiconductors, medicines, the steel. and we have to onshore those. So it's a combination of making trade free and fair and remedying this gaping national security hole that he was left with.
And if I could on China.
I would just add, Megan, the president will sign the executive order on auto tariffs later today, and we will release it as we always do. Go ahead.
Secretary, any updates on the negotiation with the European Union, and is it hard to negotiate with the European Union?
Pardon?
Do you have any updates on the negotiation with the European Union?
I'm more involved in the Asian negotiations. My observation would be, goes all the way back to Henry Kissinger's statement, when I call Europe, who do I call? So we're negotiating with a lot of different interests. Some of the European countries have put on an unfair digital service tax on our big internet provider. France and Italy, other countries, Germany and Poland, don't have that. So we want to see that unfair tax of one of America's great industries removed. So it's going to be a give and take. So they have some internal matters to decide before they can engage in an external negotiation.
Edward.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Mr. Secretary, so contacts I have in the business community say that they're basically frozen for long-term investment because of the uncertainty around tariffs. How long do you think President Trump has to make a deal before there's damage to the economy?
Look, I think that what we're seeing is that business leaders, they've gone into a pause, and I think we're going to give them great certainty on this tax bill. And I think over the next couple of weeks, as I said, we have 18 important trading relationships. We'll put China to the side. 17 they are in motion, and then, as I said yesterday, I think there's a very good chance we're going to get this tax bill done. And the tax bill is going to be very powerful for domestic U.S. investment. So what we are going to do, one of the most powerful parts of President Trump's 2017 tax bill was full expensing of equipment. We are going to make that, as President Trump said in his speech to Congress, that will be retroactive to January 20th. The other thing that we are looking to add is full expensing for factories. So bring your factory back. You can fully expense the equipment and the building. We will couple that with deregulation, cheap energy, and regulatory certainty, and that will continue to make the U.S. the greatest destination for domestic and foreign investment.
And the president, well, if I could follow, just the president said that world leaders would like to meet with him in Rome and Vatican City. I'm sorry, about trade. Other than President Zelensky, who did the president meet with, and about trade? And when could we get some of those deals?
The president met with President Zelensky, as you know, which we talked about, and the president continues to be engaged with his fellow leaders around the world in the European Union. You've seen many of them visit the White House. I want to harp on, in closing, the point the Secretary just made. On the campaign trail, the president promised the American public that he was going to make America the best country in the world to do business again. The lowest taxes, lowest regulation, lowest energy costs of anywhere in the world. And if you do business in the United States, you won't pay a tariff, you won't pay a price. That's not just good for companies around the world, but it's good for the American worker. That's what this team is focused so hard on every day. We have work to do. The golden age of America is underway, but as I pointed out in the beginning, there's a lot of reason for the American consumer, the American CEO, the American small business owner to be confident and optimistic about this president and where we're headed. So you will hear more from the president himself later this evening. He is traveling to Michigan, as you all know. He'll make a stop at the Air Force Base with Governor Whitmer, and then we will head to a rally tonight where you'll hear more from him directly. So we'll see you in Michigan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Just wrapping up a White House briefing with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on this Trump administration's approach and moves towards tariffs and how that is going to affect things, and saying that it will mean that more tax breaks will be coming to Americans. In the meantime, the big board just opened up here in the last 30 seconds. Looks like it starts on the upside, just shy of 50 points. We'll be keeping tabs on that all day. And back out here live in the Live Impact studio, day 6 now of the Karen Read trial out of the Boston, Massachusetts area. Karen Read's trial hung jury last year. So this is a retrial, charged with second-degree murder of her boyfriend, a Boston Boston police officer from a party in 2022. Today is already off to a very sensational start, calling some key witnesses. One of them, prosecution calling a witness, Jennifer McCabe, that she could possibly take the stand right now, right, Carlene?
Yes.
But in the meantime, this is
A digital forensic expert.
a forensic expert.
If y'all watched yesterday, you probably saw this guy testify on the stand, and he gave some pretty big research.
That
they did
Okay.
for search history and internet search history and phones.
So this
yes.
could poke a hole in the strategy and defense.
That's what NBC 10 is saying. Yes,
Okay.
in Boston.
All
Who's
right.
been great in our coverage today. So.
All right, so let's get right to it here. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC+.
To connect this part of the text to that diagram with a big white circle. Have I done that correctly?
Yes, correct.
Thank you, sir. The next paragraph. Over the next few hours, the GPS coordinate and the associated accuracy radius jumps around numerous times between the house and the road. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
And therefore, over the next few hours, according to your report, the phone of John O'Keefe could be in the house, correct?
Based on the low accuracy information, yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
The next paragraph. Well, we'll stop there for a moment, and I would like to, Mr. Wolf, go down, scroll please, to that diagram that's right below that text again. Yesterday, you discussed Waze, the Waze application with Ms. Attorney Brennan, correct?
Correct.
And you stated that Waze location data is more accurate than the data that comes from the Apple apps like Health Data and Location, correct?
Incorrect, no.
I'm sorry. Is Waze location data, in your view, accurate location data?
There isn't really a thing such as Waze location data.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Waze location data doesn't really exist. Waze is requesting location data from location services, and location services would respond with high accuracy information.
Okay, I appreciate that correction. So, when someone is using a Waze application, is the information they get through that Waze app accurate?
It tries to be accurate, yes.
And as a general matter, is the Waze application more accurate than the Apple information regarding location?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing because it's coming essentially from the same source, correct?
Yes, Apple provides that information to Waze.
Right. So you had testified yesterday that at a certain point, the Waze application ceased functioning, correct?
Correct.
But just because it ceased functioning, the Waze, the Apple applications were still taking effect, and that's why you could make this depiction on this item that is on the screen now, correct?
Correct.
If we could, Mr. Wolk, go to page 30. And what I'd like to highlight, please, is the text. So if we can enlarge it up at the top. So you then state, while location data from this data source, Cache SQLite, is usually able to identify the location of the device with a high degree of accuracy and reliability, these records are so close that making a distinction between the device's actual location on the front garden is impossible, correct?
Correct.
Your words, impossible.
Correct.
Did you provide any of the information in that paragraph in your timeline or to the jury in your direct testimony yesterday?
Not in the PowerPoint, no.
Next paragraph. If the location records are limited to just the records between 00:25, which is 12:25, and 6 a.m. and with an accuracy radius of 10 meters or less, there are 46 records, all of which fall within the red circle shown below. Go ahead, Mr. Wolk, if you could scroll down. And that is the only depiction there that you included in your timeline yesterday, correct?
Correct.
So you took one of two depictions in your summary of the location, this one, in terms of your timeline presentation, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the timeline, and Mr. Wolk, if we could go back to the previous with the other depiction. It's on page 29. If we could enlarge that depiction, please. So, you testified that the flagpole and the fire hydrant are more down toward the small black circle. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And yesterday, you rendered an opinion that you believed that the phone was mostly in the location by the flagpole and the fire hydrant, correct?
Objection.
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for a minute, please.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. If we could dim the lights again, please. Thank you. So, if we can enlarge that depiction. So, yesterday, Mr. Whiffen, you focused your testimony and your opinions on the smaller black circle, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't discuss at all or disclose at all this depiction, and therefore didn't discuss or disclose at all the larger white circle, correct?
Not when discussing my overall opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So the answer is
no.
Right. So the fair way to interpret and this is what you put in your report, this is your depiction, is that, and based upon what you said yesterday, the phone could be at the very edge of the top of the circle, correct?
Correct.
And the phone could also be at any point, so you can, in theory, put a phone anywhere around the very edges of that entire circle, correct?
There's caveats to that, but yes.
Well, I'm just asking you that according to your testimony yesterday in this depiction, the phone could be anywhere in that location within the area of that white circle.
Correct.
I would like to now go back to the timeline, Mr. Wolf, where we had left off, which is slide 82. And at the very top entry, you have health, time 31:56, and then the description, start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, and we agreed about 84 feet. And this is where the device began moving toward the house for a period of 20 seconds. Is that correct?
It's the time that 36 steps started to be recorded. I've got no idea of the direction of travel.
I want to focus on the time, 12:31:56. Are you aware that a firm called Aperture, on behalf of the Commonwealth, has submitted a report that states that there was a trigger event at 12:31:56 that they refer to as the supposed collision? Are you aware of that?
Objection. Sustained.
I recall seeing a report. Sorry.
You don't have to answer that.
Sorry, apologies.
That's okay.
Mr. Whiffen, are you familiar with a firm called Aperture?
I'm vaguely aware of them. I've heard of them once.
Are you familiar with a person by the name of Dr. Judson Welcher?
I'm not, no.
But you're familiar with the firm Aperture?
I am.
And do you know that the Aperture firm is working on this case?
That's the only reason I'm aware of this company.
Right. And do you know that the Aperture firm has used your data in your report? Do you know that?
I believe I saw something about that.
Do you believe you saw something, or do you know that they've used your data for a report in this matter?
I recall seeing a report. I don't recall whether it was my data that was being referenced.
Do you recall seeing a report from Aperture?
I do.
So you reviewed a report from Aperture?
Several months ago, yes.
And did you read the whole report?
It was a PowerPoint presentation, I believe?
Yes.
Yes, I reviewed it.
And you recall reading that entire PowerPoint presentation?
I don't recall what it said, but I remember reading through it.
Fair enough. Do you remember, as you sit here today, reading about a trigger of a number 1162-2? Do you recall reading that?
I recall seeing reference to a trigger event.
What did you understand the Aperture firm that's retained by the Commonwealth, what do you understand they meant by trigger 1162-2?
Objection. Sustained.
Do you recall the specific slide that discussed a trigger?
Objection. Do you recall that, Mr. Whiffen?
Very vaguely.
Okay.
Would it help your recollection if I showed you a slide from that report that you said you reviewed to refresh your recollection?
All right, so why don't I see counsel at sidebar? Bring that with you, Mr. Leslie, please.
All right, friends, it looks like we're just checking in with a little sidebar here at the Karen Read retrial that's underway still. Let's get right back to it. All right, everyone. We're back out here now. We'll go back to the Karen Read trial in a minute, but we have a special guest in studio right now. As you are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, I'm Jane Monreal. In less than a month, there is a change expected for folks who are interested in getting a home loan, but it's for a specific group. Thousands of immigrants working legally in the U.S. Could lose access to one of the most popular pathways to home ownership because starting May 25th, it's the Federal Housing Administration. They will no longer provide mortgages to non-permanent residents. And that really affects anyone from DACA recipients to skilled workers on visas. We have Daniel Jacobs right now, who is here talking about what we need to understand with this policy shift. Did I get that right? That it could affect, specific groups like that, legally
Absolutely.
working residents in the U.S., Daniel?
Absolutely, and I think that that's one of the really important points about this rule is that this does not impact undocumented folks. This is really a rule that is impacting folks who are legally present here, folks who have productive jobs in our community, small business owners, our fellow taxpayers that have followed the rules and are actually here in the United States legally and have legal work permits to have those jobs.
Daniel, what prompted this change?
Well, it's very clear. The rule that came out on March 25th by HUD was specific that it was to support some of the administration's new immigration policies. And if you don't mind, I can
No, not at all.
quote,
We've got some looped video here, so you're
Yeah.
good to look at your phone.
It says this update aligns FHA's requirements with recent executive actions that emphasize the prioritization of federal resources to protect the financial interests of the American citizens and ensure the integrity of government-insured loan programs. The administration has reaffirmed its commitment to safeguarding economic opportunities for U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents while ensuring that federal benefits, including FHA-insured mortgages, are reserved for individuals who hold lawful permanent resident status. Currently, non-permanent residents, and this is the really important, interesting part, non-permanent residents are subject to immigration laws that can affect their ability to remain legally in the country. This uncertainty poses a challenge for FHA as the ability to fulfill long-term financial obligations depends on stable residency and employment.
Wow. So as a mortgage lender, how did you react?
Well, as a mortgage lender who has been trained for 28 years not to discriminate and to have fair housing opportunities for all, I found this to be such a political affront to our fair housing infrastructure. Because what's next?
What is next?
Shall we begin asking people for medical records to make sure that we think they're going to be alive long enough to make their payments?
Yeah.
It really, to me, foretells the intentions of the administration with housing policy.
Right. Well, if you said that it does align, this is it tracks with the immigration policies from the current administration. So, obviously, the question here then: how does this affect potential home buyers?
Well, the reality is the National Association of Real Estate Professionals, NAREP, is the leading trade organization that represents this group. And only 2 days before this rule came out, by the way, they issued the 2024 State of Hispanic Homeownership, and we're celebrating record homeownership among Hispanics. And they really point out in that report how Hispanic borrowers use the FHA program at a disproportionately high level to other demographics. This is a program that makes homeownership more accessible to first-time homebuyers. It's a little easier on credit, allows for a little higher debt ratio, and it's probably the #1 program that is used among first-time homebuyers.
Right. So
now we're going to see a lot of potential first-time homebuyers getting shut out of the process.
all right. How do people need to proceed then?
Well, the way they can proceed, unfortunately, if they wait until after the May 25th deadline, which practically speaking is May 23rd,
Oh, okay.
because the 25th is a Sunday.
Okay.
And so we have to obtain case numbers by the 23rd as a practical matter. So the best way, if there are folks who are interested in potentially buying a home that are here with legal, non-permanent residency, there are other loan programs available.
Okay.
Many of them are not as accessible to everybody. Many of them require higher down payments, and some of this population just might not qualify for other loan alternatives. So if they want to take advantage of the FHA loan program now, they need to get pre-approved for a loan now, start working with their realtor now, and find a house. Now you can go under contract by May 23rd and close afterwards, like in June.
Okay.
But the time to shop and go under contract to buy is right now. In fact, our team, the True Team at Cross Country Mortgage, is holding a Fast Track to Homeownership event on Thursday night at Azteca Restaurant in Matthews at 6:30 p.m., where we're going to have native Spanish-speaking staff members along with realtors that specialize in working with this population that are going to be on hand to help people kind of fast track their focus on homeownership if that's what they're interested in.
Right. No, that's good information. So what, as you as a mortgage lender, how are you guys preparing for this transition?
We've asked our team to be available to work overtime the next few weeks to help as many clients as possible, because we are committed to homeownership for everybody. And so if someone wants to become a homeowner, our team is ready to roll up their sleeves and be on call to help get people qualified and in a home as quickly as possible to beat this deadline.
Can you say how many people this affects? I know it's hard to sort of predict, but
that's also a very interesting question, Jane, because I know that with our team, we specialize. We have Spanish-speaking staff throughout our team, and they do specialize in helping a lot of Hispanic clients, and a lot of them are here legally with work visas. And so we know that it comprises a significant portion of our business. But in that mortgagee letter that HUD put out, they even stated that they don't track the immigration status of loans they do, which I find interesting, since they get the loan application for every loan that is insured by HUD, and that status is listed right there on the loan application. It's a field on the loan application. So I don't know why they've chosen not to track it.
Yeah, they don't have that data.
But the scope of the impact remains undefined by design.
okay. And is there maybe talk or discussion, what's the vibe or feel that it might be reversed down the line?
Interestingly, I did expect there to be a big movement to reverse this, but I think with all the noise in Washington right now that's going on, I haven't heard nearly as much of a push to reverse this as I would have expected or liked to.
Has your organization seen an uptick in applications in this demographic then?
You know, interestingly, we haven't seen the uptick that we expected. I think there's just a lot of fear out there in the marketplace right now. Yeah.
And maybe they don't know about the change?
I think there's maybe a lack of knowledge and also some fear And that's why we're having this event on Thursday to just educate and prepare.
Right.
And then if folks aren't ready to buy now, then at least they'll know what the options are going to be after May 23rd.
Yep.
And they can plan for that as well.
All right. Daniel Jacobs, how can people find you if they have any questions or know somebody that might need your assistance?
They can go to thetrueteam.com. That's TrueTeam.com. There's no E in it.
All right. TheTrueTeam.com. Daniel Jacobs, thank you for coming in, for enlightening us on this change that a lot of folks need to know about.
Yeah.
May 25th.
Absolutely.
Non-permanent residents.
Legally present non-permanent residents.
All right.
May
not be granted a loan. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Back out here now in the Live Impact studio. Shall we go back to Karen Read? This is the trial, not of the century, but it is certainly a spicy trial. It is a hot topic, Carlene. Yeah, day 6, the retrial of Karen Read out of Dedham, Massachusetts. Let's go to that back out live here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Does a human have to be reading that for that entry to be made?
The message needs to be on screen. If the conversation with Jen McCabe was already on screen when the device was unlocked, then that message would automatically be considered read.
Next entry, app lock 123209, end application focuses messages, and then it says device locked with lock button for the last time. That requires human interaction with the phone, correct?
Correct.
And it actually requires somebody to take the cell phone and press the side button to do that, correct?
It does, yes.
So there has to be some degree of coordination for that to occur, for a human to be able to have something that hits that button, correct?
Certainly, yes.
Do you understand what the term fine motor skill means? Do you understand that? And would that person have to be using fine motor skills to do that?
Yes.
Next entry, 123216. End of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, again 84 feet. That is in your timeline because that's when you believe the end of the health event, the end of the 36 steps occurred, correct?
That is the time that the device data shows the end of the health event, yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you need the light, Mr. Lessie?
Yeah, it would be helpful. Thank you,
Could
Your
we have
Honor.
the lights, please, Dave?
Do you recall writing in your March 2025 report the following? The final health activity of note on John's phone can be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, during which 36 steps were recorded, covering a distance of 25.4 meters, again that 84 feet, according to healthdbsecure.db. Do you recall writing that?
I do.
And you used in your report 36 steps were recorded covering a distance of 25.4 meters or 84 feet, correct?
Correct.
Do you know a trooper named Nicholas Garino?
I'm aware of him, yes.
Are you a little more than aware of him? You've worked with him on this case, haven't you?
He sent me some of the files related to it, but further than that, I've got no relationship with him.
But isn't someone sending you files on a case you're working on, working with the person? Isn't that a fair conclusion?
It could be.
Do you recall reading any reports of Nicholas Garino?
I don't recall reading a report by Nick.
Does that mean you didn't read it, or you just don't recall reading it?
I honestly can't remember if I did or not. I remember some of the reports that I read for this case. I don't recall if one was by Nick.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you a portion of his report to determine whether you would have read it?
Please.
Thank you. A moment, Your Honor, please.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Show Mr. Brennan.
Yes. I just want to make sure I've got the entire report. Mr. Whitman?
Thank you.
May I stand by the witness, Your Honor? Thank you. I am providing you with a document, and I would ask if that refreshes your recollection as to whether you've read a report of Mr. Garino.
A report or this report?
This report. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
I don't recall ever seeing this report.
Have you ever had any conversations with Trooper Nicholas Garino?
Very briefly.
But you had, the answer is yes?
Yes.
Did Trooper Garino tell you that he measured the distance from the flagpole to the front door and it was 72 feet? Did he ever tell you that? Object to the floor.
Sustain.
Did you ever have a conversation with Trooper Nick Garino about the distance from the flagpole to the front door of 34 Fairview?
Maybe.
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 So, is it maybe then you had a conversation with him in which he stated to you that that distance is 72 feet?
It's maybe.
So if we go back to what we were discussing earlier about the steps and the distance covered, and this is in your report of March 2025, where we've talked about this, and it's the final health activity of note on John's phone can be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16.
Is this the correct slide?
Oh, no, it's not.
So let's take it down.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me start that over. The final health activity of note on John's phone could be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, during which 36 steps were recorded, covering a distance of 5.4 meters, or 84 feet. 84 feet is greater than...
You are watching here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Jane Monreal. Day 6 there of the retrial of Karen Reed, who is being charged with second-degree manslaughter of her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, at a party back in 2022. That witness there on the stand just being he is a forensic cell phone expert, and potentially later today there could be another key witness testifying, Jennifer McCabe, if you follow the trial at all. So we're going to be dipping in and out of that trial. In the meantime, today marks 1 year since somber anniversary here. 4 officers killed in an ambush in East Charlotte. And today at 5:30, we're going to take a look at that day. What has changed? The questions we still have in honoring the officers. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, we did have one of the officers here, CMPD, one of the survivors who was injured, Mike Giglio, I believe, who played in the Salute to Heroes event over the weekend, last weekend at Bojangles Coliseum. Nate Morbido now here joining us in the Live Impact studio. And Nate, we were both covering that fateful day a year ago. And I remember just having to get to the studio before 2 o'clock and then thinking we didn't have much information, but then having to come back, and then it was what we call wall-to-wall coverage, and it was for the next 5 hours sitting there in the studio as details were slowly coming in and then bringing you in with all of the updates.
Yeah, I remember that afternoon, the newsroom can be a loud place at times, but it also can be really quiet. And I remember our assignment desk manager saying something about officers down. Mm-hmm. And you immediately think, this is not good.
Right.
And if you remember on that day, very early on, there was some misinformation about where this happened, which really slowed everything down for the news gathering purposes. There was a time when the assignment desk was trying to figure out where is the actual location of the shooting, right? And one of the biggest things that I push just through my many years in this business and from my mentors who have taught me this, there is no rush to get out information from our perspective, especially this kind of sensitive information situation. Rather, we are trying to be very methodical and make sure we're right before we release this. I had received some information early on that this was going to be a terrible afternoon. And there was just no rush to get that on the news, because what if that information is wrong, right?
Right.
And you want to make sure families are notified early on. But as that afternoon continued moving, it was pretty clear when all the different hospitals were on standby, when roads were getting closed down, that this was turning into something that was going to be the worst day for law enforcement in our city's history. And it was really tough, because you start thinking, well, what can we do to try right now to get information out to the public, right? And I think in a lot of times in these tragedies, we're concerned with the number, right? In a school shooting, God forbid, how many people, how many officers, right? And instead of going that route early on, I started looking up the neighborhood where this happened and tried to start calling neighbors there. And I did make contact with several people who lived in that neighborhood, maybe who worked nearby, to just get a sense of how tense it was out there. Was this an active scene? Because that's information we can share to the public.
Right.
It's not about how many.
No, it's a
people are
public
affected.
safety issue.
Exactly. We're sharing critical information to the public right then and there. The end result will be the end result. We'll get that information. And that's what I mean when there's not really a rush to get numbers and names on there. We're trying to get the information that the public needs right then and there.
Right.
Which is, what is the current situation? I remember Richard Devane, who was out there, one of our reporters, made contact with someone who had video or an image of that happening. I started communicating with that person, and we were able to get an image on TV fairly quickly about what it looked like there.
Right.
You know, we had a drone operator out there, but he couldn't get a drone up at the time, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of restrictions.
Exactly.
The area that was cordoned off, I suppose,
They had a
just getting
command
bigger
center.
and bigger.
Right, that was kind of far away. So it's really hard to get eyes on the situation. And I think that's why it's so important. I was here in the newsroom still. You kind of have to have people here still, not just the people that go on air and deliver the news, but initially gathering the news so that we can make phone calls, so that we can see a map, so that I can look at property records to see who the owners are, so I can try to find their phone numbers. We went through all of that process the day of. And I remember as we started kind of getting ready to go on the news, for my role in this, it was kind of eerie just how the last time a couple officers were killed here in Charlotte was like a mile or two away from this exact scene.
Interesting.
So it's just such a sad day. And I remember in the days after, you know, early on I was very focused on who the shooter was and kind of uncovering his record a bit and if the justice system failed these officers that day. But then I watched the funerals that were published, particularly the CMPD officer's funeral. I just remember listening to his widow's words and being they were so powerful. And I was just struck at how strong she was in that moment to deliver that. And I think that we saw a lot of that, right? Thomas Weeks' wife later talked to our Sarah French at the time, and just seeing her strength to kind of deal with this terrible situation. Yeah, I mean, it's just a horrible situation, the worst possible situation. And then you see, you know, at his funeral, these people that are speaking, you know, just with great stories. These are human beings who went to work that day, had a job to do. I can't imagine that they thought this to this level could happen. I'm sure they prepared for a situation where things could go sideways. But this amount of death and injuries, particularly when you have a shooter who was up high in the house, who was clearly not surprised by their arrival. That's a problem when you're trying to serve a warrant on a fugitive. You want to catch them by surprise. They really didn't have a ton of time to react. And I remember, you know, sadly having to watch some video of these officers that were kind of trying to protect themselves from a bit of a distance away. Some were on a fence, some were in a carport, and you could see bullets going by. And I just can't even imagine being in that situation. And then, you know, their fellow officers are there trying to help, and they don't really know the full extent of this either. There is some radio traffic that's kind of painting a picture for them. But, you know, at one point they thought there was a second shooter because of, remember that?
The uncertainty of where the bullets were coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so complex. And even a year later, we really don't know exactly what happened. We have an idea. If you remember, the body camera from this incident wasn't released. That's kind of the one thing that, although difficult for us to watch and then make decisions about what to release, if anything, that would have helped piece together some of this from the public's perspective. But even in the weeks after, you know, number one, I looked at federal funding and warning signs that the Marshal Service had given members of Congress about this kind of thing potentially happening. We found some federal audits that kind of raised questions about training in the past for the task force officers. Remember, this was a task force that was serving a warrant. And you start also looking at the system, the institution, right? Not so much about individual decisions that day, but the system that brought those officers there that day. We talked to several different experts who even still today wonder, why did they serve the warrant on that day in the afternoon?
Right, that was a
in
question that popped up almost immediately.
Right, it just, for some people, it seemed odd. But, you know, then we talked to those experts and they say, I mean, if you get a tip that this person is there right now at this location, you go with it. Because if you don't go right away, they may be gone. And maybe this was their window. Those are the questions that we don't really know. I'm sure there are people that do know that information, and I'm not sure it will ever really be public. But part of our job has been trying to figure out, well, what were the lessons learned? Because I don't know if you remember, but early on, he's now retired, but the director of the Marshal Service said, we're going to learn from this. We're going to try to take a real hard look. We know the risk is getting greater. We're going to try to figure out what we can do better to prevent this in the future. So, you know, I'd covered a couple of different stories after we can talk about in a minute, but one of my main projects was trying to figure out, well, what is the status of this internal review? What is changing because of this? And I made some what we call Freedom of Information Act requests. These are requests that anybody in the public can make to their government, and I did this to the U.S. Marshal Service just to try to get an idea, like this after-action review, which they call. Where does it stand? Is it done? What is changing because of this? And this is a document that I received. It's the only documents that I got, actually, and I think they sent it to me in September. Yeah.
Okay.
This was.
How long did it take to receive those?
I mean, they did a pretty good job.
Okay.
Maybe a couple months, maybe less than that. They've been
It's
pretty
not
good.
bad considering.
Yeah, I mean, the Marshal Service really has been great to work with in this situation, considering the terrible tragedy it's been. I mean,
Right.
if you think about early on, too, I'm doing stories about how they warned about this, how their training was an issue before, you know, and they've been really respectful of our reporting, knowing that this is our job, is to ask these questions, is to be skeptical. You can, and I think I said this on the air, you can be both respectful and revere these officers and honor their sacrifice, and at the same time ask the questions that this kind of situation demands, because we don't want this to happen again.
No.
So anyways, these records here were interesting because it showed that in July, the survivors of this shooting went to a training facility in Georgia and met with the Marshal Service and explained what equipment immediately they think could help improve safety. Now you'll see it's redacted here.
Mm-hmm.
That's not uncommon. This is confidential. This is sensitive. You don't want to give criminals the upper hand against law enforcement. So we knew that at least there were some recommendations early on taking place. But, you know, also we had a change in administration at the president level, right? So you have also people in positions that change. I mentioned the director of the Marshal Service has since retired. So this after-action review the federal government had started is not done yet. I mean, it's been a full year, and let's be real here, this was an incredibly complicated shooting, an unusually high number of people that were killed that day, and you had a change in administration. This is still going through the process, and this after-action review is going to look at what worked, what didn't work, what they could do better in the future. And here we are a year later. We still don't know that.
Now, you like you said, you've done many stories, had a revisit with each one. You also talked to Congressman Mark Harris. What was that conversation? Why go to him, and what was that conversation
like? Yeah, so
like?
Congressman Mark Harris, he's a freshman representative, and he's on the House Judiciary Committee. That is a really powerful committee when it comes to oversight over the U.S. Marshal Service. So he really has a stake in kind of holding that agency accountable, particularly when it comes to funding in the future, number one. Number two, he has signed on to a couple of bills meant to, as he would say, back the blue, better protect law enforcement. He also represents part of Charlotte and the surrounding area. And so we wanted to talk with him about what his expectation is moving forward. And here's what he told us.
It's what you can learn from it. If there were mistakes that were made, you learn. If there's more information that could have been available, try to see how you can get that more information available, so where everybody has the data, everybody knows what they're walking into.
Yeah, important, right? You know what history tells you you might walk into. Through our reporting for a story that's going to air tonight at 5:30, we interviewed a former chief of staff for the U.S. Marshal Service and a former marshal. His name's Art Roderick. He knows what these officers went through to some degree because he was involved in a deadly firefight back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember hearing about Ruby Ridge in Idaho.
Yeah.
It was very well known at the time, kind of infamous actually on a lot of fronts. And his partner was shot and killed. And he knows what happens in those situations. He refused to leave his colleague there. He said, they ordered me off the mountain, I wouldn't go. I didn't leave till the next day. I wanted to make sure that we could get his body off the mountain.
Yeah.
He also knows the importance of learning from this kind of a situation and how critical it is to, you can never, and multiple experts have told us, you can never get comfortable in these situations. You always have to be on your toes and be prepared for things to go sideways.
Right. My husband always likes to say, head on a swivel.
Yeah, firefighter, right?
Firefighter. So, and as a spouse of a first responder, that same idea you talked about, you might be prepared. Chances are you're going to come home at the end of your shift, but there is that very small chance that you might not. And, something in the back of the mind, but you can't let that rule your existence and vocation, right?
Yeah, I just want to point this out too. I'm really proud of how we handled this situation as a news organization too, because we have been so sensitive. We have tried to be so sensitive in every aspect of our reporting to respect the families of those fallen,
right,
to respect the survivors, to also respect the viewers and the public that demand a safer world to live in.
Yeah, I mean, and back in the day, or some organizations still, they just want to get the news out there fast and furious to be the first to report it. Many times it's not right, but we will be sensitive to the people involved and make sure we have confirmed and verified things. But something like this, too, is very fluid. And I just remember being there on the desk and just thinking that this is... we have very little information to go by, and I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. We are trying to get our crews into place out there, but like you said, it was hard to get to the scene. It's hard to show what folks are doing and operating without giving tactics away, and be sensitive to the actual police operation, because that is still an ongoing, an active situation. So, yeah, just that day was tough, not only for, us media folks, but really everyone, neighbors, people who just were not knowing what to do when they were caught in the jam up. We talked to Kaylin Hagwood yesterday, and she, in the days following, would talk about the mental health aspect, because it was so intense. That day, the next couple of days, you having to revisit, a different angle, uncovering something else, which is still ongoing, evidently. What is that like for you, having to kind of dip in and out of that sort of story?
Yeah, I mean, so you never really forget about it, number one. This is always in the back of my mind, what happened there, and what other questions haven't we asked. There was a time when I had to listen to the scanner traffic, which was very difficult to hear. I mean, we didn't know which officers survived, which didn't, but there were very graphic things described about how to try to get these officers out and get them to the hospital. And I found that to be very difficult. And even when we put together our story, we altered voices on the scanner because we didn't want one of the fallen officers' voices to be on there. We wouldn't know that unless they said it.
Wow.
So that was really challenging. And I heard the woman that was in the house. Remember, there was a woman and her daughter in there.
Oh, right.
You could hear that phone call and the tense situation. Remember, they interviewed her initially. They thought maybe she was a suspect, and then they let her go. And you're thinking to yourself, my goodness, you're trapped in a home with a person who is shooting at police. They're shooting back. I mean, I'm just thinking about, there's a kid in the home. I mean,
all kinds.
It's a lot. And again, there were a few months there after where I received a tip about a situation involving a handful of CMPD officers who essentially decided to end their workday that day as it started happening. I don't know if you remember that. They logged off the computer. They basically became unavailable to respond, and their colleagues were upset about that, because in this kind of situation, you always hear, we run toward the danger, we don't run away. And we were so careful and so delicate and so sensitive and trying to be really fair to the truth of what happened there. The majority of officers absolutely were heroes that day. They ran out there, they did what they could to save, and hearing the scanner traffic, I know that because I heard it. But at the same time, making sure those that didn't do that, if they violated policy, are held accountable in some way. Because if those officers, the idea was from their colleagues, if they're not going to respond to their own officers getting shot at, what will they do for the general public? And that was a very challenging story to tell, because we were trying to be respectful and sensitive and not paint a picture like all officers did this, but at the same time hold the police department accountable. And I remember the police department, their spokespeople, kind of were really trying to not get us to air the story, essentially. And I made an effort to go to a press conference, did not put a camera in anyone's face, which I could have done. I didn't want to do
Right.
that, but I wanted to be really clear about we're trying to be fair and trying to really understand so that we can be accurate in our reporting. So, it's just that. It's the whole, trying to be respectful, but also trying to ask the questions that matter. And I do think that we've kind of missed that a little bit in the year that's come after this. There was the DA's review. Remember the officer involved trying to decide if the use of force was okay.
Yes, right.
And Spencer Merriweather published his report and found, no issue there. But there's so much unanswered, and from a public's perspective, I can understand why some will never be released because they are sensitive information. But there is a need for, I think, some reassurance that we're going to continue to improve and be better. And if you remember, CMPD kind of got embroiled in this little bit of a public debate about the outer carrier vests.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? That was
Yeah,
kind of in the aftermath of this.
Mhm.
Should patrol officers be allowed to wear these? You can put extra armor in them. They have certain hooks that can help you pull people out quickly. And in the end, the chief agreed to let it happen, but it was really like
It was
this
a bit of a struggle.
for a while. It kind of rose to the city council level. So we know that's changed. We know the city of Charlotte did not do an after-action review. That's what CMPD tells me in this case, or at least published one. We know they had several debriefs on this issue. Again, I imagine they have changed some things because of it, but they're not publicizing what that is. It's just important to ask those questions on the same day that we're honoring the lives of those officers who are no longer with us. We want to, in their name, make sure that people just like them are protected moving forward. And
Yeah.
so it can be uncomfortable, but that is the job, at least for me, that I do at this TV station. And all of us have a critical role in making sure this story is told completely, right? And I remember
Yes.
you and all of our anchors and reports just being so calm that day, which is also really, really critical. At some point, when I found out how many officers were at that point likely dead, your kind of heart starts racing a bit. It'd be very hard to immediately go on and try to report that to people. You do such a good job in a calm way to not, I guess, lessen the severity or impact of it, but also not be in a way that's kind of jumpy and, you know what I mean, that can kind of make everybody's nerves. Because,
Mhm.
when you're an anchor, you kind of trickle down to the rest of the newsroom.
Sure.
And our job is to be as calm as possible in that moment to try to get the news out.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of those, because everything was unknown, we are to lead with the voice of calm, hopefully, as this was a public safety issue, a lot of unknowns, and the team and that we are in the newsroom, it is more than just the people in the studio and the reporters out there in the field. So trying to get the information timely, accurately. But I do remember one viewer in the days after said, saw you guys, I felt like I didn't have to, and I didn't change the channel because everyone was really, honing in on what was happening. And they felt that our coverage was complete and gave them what they wanted and needed from all of their questions and the curiosity and concerns for their neighbors.
What I also love too, that we covered and we showed the funerals that were public.
Yes.
We decided to do that as a station, which I think was so important because they were so full to begin with, and I was hanging on every word that was said there because
Right.
they were so powerful. And you want to really, I think it's hard in this business, especially when things happen, having covered many tragedies, you're so in your job there that you cannot emotionally fully understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I really made it a point to watch as much of those as I could so that I could be touched emotionally and not forget the severity of what happened, so I can remove myself from the job and be 100% a person as I listened to that. And I remember
Good point.
getting emotional and tearing up just listening to one of the widows speak. It's just so hard, but important that we don't lose sight of that. This isn't a
Right.
news story. This is real life.
Yeah, these are people We might not know them, but we know them. We know their story, a connection, a family.
Yep.
Okay, Nate Morabito, thank you. What a look back, you know. Thank you for your take on that and important work that you continue
All
to
of
do.
us do it. Yep.
All right. 1 year later, today, 5:30 p.m., 4 officers, a year ago, killed in an ambush in East Charlotte. At 5:30, we're going to take a look at the day and things that Nate touched upon. What has changed, the questions we still have, and where we need to go. As we take it back out here, Live Impact Studio. Right now, we want to take you out to another White House briefing. Carlene?
Speaker Johnson, they're talking about Trump's first 100 days in office.
All right, let's get to it.
Success is and codify his agenda into law. The Democrats just still don't get it. I mean, they just keep demonstrating they don't get it. More than 100 days into the 119th Congress, and the contrast could not be clearer. Everybody said, recounted some of this today, but they don't have any message. They don't have a clear leader. They don't have a clear vision. They don't know what to do. Their platform has been repudiated, and they're turning on themselves. You know, the vice chair of the DNC is going to spend tens of millions to take down his own incumbents. That shows you where they are. They've resorted to cursing and shouting and outrageous political stunts. Their approval ratings are in the low 20s. Their most vulnerable members got outraised 2-1, as I mentioned. And it just goes on and on. I two polls I just want to highlight, and then we'll go to your questions. There was a poll that came out a little over a month ago. It's Quinnipiac, and I think it's the most telling poll of the first 100 days of this Congress. But I got the graphic in front of me. It was Politico published it. Lots of people talked about it. The headline says Democrats face historic discontent with the base. Now, what they did was they polled Democrats and their approval of their own party and Republicans' approval of their own party. I mentioned this before, but Democrats are underwater 9%. They have a net negative 9% approval rating in their party, whereas Republicans in Congress are enjoying a 69% approval rating. Okay, so that chart is stark. It's the largest chasm between the two parties in history. It's the highest marks we've ever gotten and the lowest they've ever gotten. It tells you where they are. This morning, CNN has a new poll. Getting you a nod right there on the front row, right? Republicans' view of GOP leadership, 78% approve. Thank you, CNN. 21% disapprove, all right? Democrats' view of Democrat leadership, 42% approve, 57% disapprove. Stark contrast between the two. And one of the most baffling political displays that we've ever seen, congressional Democrats use their district work period to fly to El Salvador and provide comfort to a wife-beating MS-13 gang member who entered the U.S. illegally. I mean, it was a shameful performance, and I hope their constituents do not forget it. We won't. And we reflect on the first 100 days of the Trump administration. It's very clear which party is fighting for the American people, for a stronger and safer and more prosperous America, as Leader Scalise just said. We're happy to be here, and we're happy today. You can probably tell. Take your questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the subject of polls about the first 100 days of President Trump's administration were released a few days ago, and he has the lowest approval rating of any president in the last 80 years, according to the Washington Post, ABC News, and Ipsos, I believe. Other polls suggest similarly low numbers. How do you interpret those numbers, and is that not a sign that your conference, your party, your leader need to be changing course given those low record ratings?
No, look, there's always in any new administration, it's a roller coaster, right? When you come in and you make dramatic change, which is what he did, he's delivering on the promises made. There's some bumps along the road. We're changing everything. As we said, when President Trump was running, I told him and we told our own voters he could be the most consequential president of the modern era. Now the media is, all of you are acknowledging that is true. By extension, we can be the most consequential Congress as well, because we quite literally have to fix every area of public policy. The last 4 years was an absolute unmitigated disaster, and we got to fix it all. So when you're doing that, it's disruptive in a way, and the early initial people, they have an emotional reaction sometimes for the big changes, but what they're seeing and what the real polling is showing is that they understand that we're headed somewhere. This is the out of the gates all these big achievements that we just recounted, and I said we're just getting started. The reconciliation bill is the big chunk of this. The vehicle through which we will deliver the America First agenda is this big, beautiful bill, which is why we call it that. The president's approval rating is better than it was in 2017 when he got started, right? Because people trust him. The thing about President Trump is he's had an administration. This is not a new thing. People remember. It's hard to remember. It seems like it was 20 years ago. But right before COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of the world. There's been a little question and concern about, the rocky start, some of the stock market, some of the tariff policy and all that. But right now, even today, people are beginning to see the dust settle on that. They understand there was a master strategy behind this, and they're seeing the results. We're going to have 100 countries, by some accounts, and maybe higher, renegotiate their trade policies with America because of what President Trump did. He's the only leader bold enough to have done that. And that's going to be a net positive, of course, for all the American people. It's going to be more fair for us. We trust the executive to do that. We trust this executive to do that. And President Trump has had some great achievements. So, look, polling goes up and down. We all talk about it, pros and cons. But at the end of the day, we're going to deliver on these results, and the American people are going to reward us for it. Yeah.
Two of your members, Elise Stefanik and Mike Lawler, are both considering runs for governor of New York. Those one seat in particular, Congressman Lawler's seat, may be one of the most competitive in the country. They can't do both. They can't run for governor and Congress. Will you have conversations with them about what works best for your conference, and have you started having those conversations yet?
I have lots of conversations. I love them both. They're two of my favorite people and my most trusted colleagues, and they're both super talented, which is why they get talked about for doing other things. We have lots of Look, we've got a very talented group here. We have lots of House Republicans who are being courted to run for Senate or governor or do something big. I mean, my preference is that they all stay here with me, right? We get the job done. But I don't begrudge anybody for having other opportunities, and we ultimately support him in whatever they do. But are we having conversations? We are, yeah, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But I ultimately, look, I support my friends and colleagues. These are more than colleagues, they're friends. And I want all of my friends to do well and go as high as they can, be of their highest and best use to the country. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Mr. Speaker Johnson, do you plan on meeting with governors to advise them on how they might restructure their budgets if you're reforming?
Here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, seeing there a live press conference with Speaker Johnson talking about President Trump's first 100 days. Top right of the screen as a Karen Read retrial continues out of Dedham, Massachusetts. And now underway is a press conference talking about security as the Kentucky Derby is coming up this weekend. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Are going to gut Medicaid. It's just simply not true, and that's why their ads and billboards had to come down. We sent them a cease and desist letter because we pointed out they were lying. By the way, the Democrat leaders in Washington have zero credibility with the American people. Remember, they tried to tell us for the last 4 years that Joe Biden was an exceptionally talented, brilliant, on-point leader. Okay, they don't have any credibility on any of this. We're going to prove the opposite. The committee markups, as Leader Scalise noted, we have 7 committees marking up components of the big, beautiful bill this week. We have 4 others next week. That third week that we return, the Budget Committee will merge all that together into the one big, beautiful bill, and you will see the results. We are going to preserve the programs. We're not gutting Medicaid. We're going to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse, which every single American should be applauding. The Democrats should as well, but they're not allowing themselves to do it. And we're going to make sure it works better. We're going to preserve the program, not cut it. It's exactly the opposite of what the Democrats are saying. So the states will adjust to all these things, and we will make sure that the people who need these benefits and rely upon them are protected. Okay, that's the whole thing. Yeah.
Apologies for a wonky tax question. One of the big concerns for some of our investors and Bloomberg readers is the tax treatment of carried interest. The president wants to change that. What are your views on that?
I've listened to the discussion, a very thoughtful discussion back and forth amongst interested parties, and I'm not going to forecast where that comes. I mean, I know. Look, I'll say this about our Ways and Means Republicans: they have put in, I mean, literally scores of hours down in the basement with the whiteboards, gaming out the very ideas and making sure that we make the right choices. You'll see a lot. That markup will be very telling on that. But they've come to a consensus. I'm not going to get out in front of them before that's discussed and released in committee. But we've heard from interest groups around the country, and we want to do right by them. I think at the end of the day, I think what's going to be great about this legislation, the reason it's going to be so consequential, the reason it's going to be the biggest legislation, I think, in many decades that Congress has passed, is because not only are we going to give everybody a tax break, right? They're not going to have the largest tax increase in U.S. history at the end of this year. It's going to help hardworking families. It's going to be turbo boost to the economy, because I think this will send a message of stability to the markets, the bond market, the stock market, investors, job creators, entrepreneurs, that they have their tax rates permanent and solidified. They know they can plan accordingly, and that people have more money in their pocket to spend on their own families and their own needs and obligations. That's going to be good for everybody. And I think when it comes to this, I think all boats are going to rise again. That was the net result in the first Trump administration, the greatest economy in the history of the world, because we did thoughtful tax policy and we did real regulatory reform. Right now, as Congressman Downing said, both those things are on steroids. And you're going to see this result in spades, and people are going to see it and feel it. And by the way, they're going to feel it before the midterm election in 2026. So that's another big thing. Last one.
You inserted a provision in a rule to block efforts to target Trump on tariffs, and now you've done the same to prevent resolutions of inquiry, including this probe into Pete Hegseth and his use of Signal. Why are you using the rules of the House to effectively protect Trump rather than let the House work its will?
No, we're using the rules of the House to prevent political hijinks and political stunts, and that's what the Democrats have. As I mentioned, no leader, no vision, no platform. All they have is obstruction. They're trying to target. They showed us over the last 4 years, the last 8 years. They used lawfare. They used, conspiracy theories. All these political weapons to just go after the president and make his life miserable. That's not what the American people voted for. That's not what they deserve. We can do better. So we're preventing this nonsensical waste of our time. We don't have time to waste. We got to, as I mentioned, we got to fix every. But as we've discussed many times in this room, the executive branch has the constitutional and appropriate legal authority to address unfair trade practices with other countries. That's exactly what President has been doing and is doing, and the results, I think, are going to be obvious at the end of this. We have to give them the runway. This is not a separation of powers concern at all. Congress has a role to play, but so does the executive, and I think everything they've done thus far has been entirely lawful and appropriate, and that's what our policies reflect. So we're going to continue to do that, and I think the American people are going to see the result at the end, and they're going to be quite satisfied by all this. So we got to move. Thank you.
Can you give a quick timeline on reconciliation?
Yeah, I'll just say this: we're sticking to our plan. We had a Big Six meeting yesterday with Secretary Bessent and Kevin Hassett at NEC. Senator Crapo, who's the finance chair over there, Leader Thune, I, and Jason Smith, Ways and Means chair. And we had White House folks there as well. And what we discussed was the timeline. As the Treasury Secretary Bessent has said a few times, he gave us, credit for moving this so aggressively on this calendar. I'm really glad that we did, because we got to deliver this in economic relief for the American people quickly. We've got to codify all this. We are on track to pass the bill out of the House, as we've said from the very beginning, and get it over to the next stage by Memorial Day. Now, I don't know how long the Senate's going to take to do their piece, but I was very encouraged after the meeting yesterday, frankly. Leader Thune and Senator Crapo are on point. The Senate Republicans have been working very hard together. We got almost a year head start on them on this process, so that explains the sequence of events. But we're going to get it done by Memorial Day. Senate over there, they take a few weeks to work through that. We merge this together, we get it to the president's desk quickly for signature. The Secretary Bessent said yesterday, a big celebration by July 4th. I hope it happens much sooner than that. And we're going to keep pressing aggressively in the House to make sure that happens. Thank you.
And a debt limit included in that?
Yes.
Speaker Johnson live there out of Washington, D.C., speaking on President Trump's first 100 days, a live press conference there. As we go now live back out to Dedham, Massachusetts, the retrial continues for Karen Read. On the stand right now is a cell phone expert going through the phones of Karen Read's boyfriend's cell phone. He was the one who died that night at a party in 2022. Let's go to this here live on Live Impact News on WCNC+. All right, this is a quick little sidebar. We're going to stick with this just for a minute here. All right, looks like that sidebar's taking a little bit longer than we anticipated. Got to take you right now to a Senate hearing talking about veterans' health and their mental health in particular. Let's listen here live on Live Impact News on WCNC+.
Make sure that the administration answers our question. Our responsibility is oversight and scrutiny, and to prevent the firing of another 83,000 VA employees over the coming months. We know from this committee, we've all been on it for a while, that outreach is essential to bring veterans into mental health. We can't rely only on veterans calling a crisis line or coming to the VA facilities. There has to be outreach. 10 of those 17 per day average veterans taking their own lives, 10 of them have had no contact with the VA. If we can reach more, we can save more. If we fire the counselors and others who are doing outreach, it will cripple efforts to save from suicide, including the Fox program. So while we're here today, I hope to hear from our witnesses about the importance of outreach and how it can be bolstered and strengthened. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ranking Member, thank you. We are now delighted to have before the Veterans Committee on a temporary basis the senator from Virginia, Senator Warner, one of our esteemed colleagues, and this is a rare occasion when other senators not on the committee appear before us, but you are welcome to be here, Senator Warner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Blumenthal. This is obviously a very important topic. You've given me 4 minutes. I'll try to get hit under 4 minutes so I actually get asked back, but very much appreciate the work of this committee. I know the issue of mental health of our veterans is extraordinarily important, and this is something I think we all realize is part of a core commitment. This is not a nice to do. This is an obligation we owe to the men and women who've served us. It is not charity. It is something that we must fulfill. And unfortunately, as the chair and the ranking member, and I know all the committee members realize, veteran suicide is a scourge that has to be addressed. For the past several years, Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program, I think, has been an invaluable tool for the VA to use. Senator Boozman and I came up with an initial legislation back in 2019. A number of members on this committee were firm supporters. That turned into an effort that ultimately led to the Staff Sergeant Fox Grant Program. In that time, $150 million has gone out in my home state of Virginia. $4.5 million of that has gone out to organizations who are providing the kind of critical outreach to make sure that veterans who are in duress know that the services are available. As Ranking Member Blumenthal, we have a huge concentration of veterans down in Hampton Roads, and the fact that of these 17 suicides today, the fact that literally 10 of those never interact with the VA is a challenge that we have to overcome. This program was a temporary grant program. It is time for its permanent reauthorization. I've joined again with Senator Boozman on legislation to do that. I know the chair and the ranking members and others on this committee have similar legislation. I just want to add my voice that this is something we have to get done. The sooner the better. Literally, veterans' lives depend upon it. And if in any way I can, as an off-committee member, help in these efforts, please count me as one of your allies. I appreciate the opportunity, and I will note, Mr. Chairman, that I am ceding back 1 minute and 40 seconds.
A message, it's an opportunity for senators to learn from Senator Warner. A message well delivered.
All right, you were watching, moments ago, we were watching Speaker Johnson speaking on President Trump's first 100 days. Want to go right now to the House Leadership Press Conference, in part in response. This is a live scene from Washington, D.C., where the Vice Chair, Ted Lieu, is speaking. He's the Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus. Let's listen in here on Live Impact News on WCNC+.
Op ratio
ability to handle sensitive information. You may have seen recent reporting showing that his phone number has now been all over the internet. And if hackers have your phone number, there are a number of ways to surveil your phone. I asked reporters to look into whether he used his personal phone overseas. There is a hack called the SS7 attack. It stands for Signaling System Number 7. I was part of an investigation a few years ago. It doesn't matter how great your phone is, it's because of telecommunications providers you use. There's a flaw in there that they can surveil your phone, and they can do that in the U.S., it's even worse overseas. So you all should check out whether Secretary Hegseth compromises phone if you use it overseas. With that, it is my honor now to invite Representative Hannion to come speak to you. Before being in Congress, he was a public school teacher and a state senator from the great state of New York.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm John Mannion from Syracuse, New York. I'm a member of the Agriculture and Education and Workforce Committees, and I represent New York 22, Central New York and the Mohawk Valley. We're at 100 days into this second Trump administration, and what we've seen is chaos, confusion, confrontation, and fear. We're witnessing an extraordinary assault on our Constitution, on our norms and our values, on our democracy, unlike what we've ever seen before, as we're watching in real time the dismantling of governmental guardrails. One place where the damage is particularly clear is as it relates to our trade policy. Tariffs should be used with precision and purpose, but not as blunt political instruments. I believe now is the time for Congress to reassert the constitutional authority it continues to cede to the executive branch, and tariff policy is a good place for that to start. New York 22 has a long history of manufacturing, of innovation. We have a vibrant agricultural sector and world-class research institutions. We're home to the largest private investment in the history of this country, with Micron's historic $100 billion project to onshore semiconductor chip manufacturing in my district in Clay, New York. It's a transformative project that will create thousands of jobs and solidify our region's role in the global economy and the global tech economy. But just as importantly, it is about making sure that our national security and the resources that we use to preserve our national security is happening right here in our country. My district is a down-the-middle district. We have representatives at the state legislature and the counties that are both Republicans and Democrats. CHIPS and Science was a piece of legislation that required all levels of government from both parties and stakeholders and experts in the field to negotiate it, get it right, so that we can make sure that we put our national security at a premium and the emerging threats as it relates to supply chains. We had to address that. We did address it. It was done in the last Congress, and as a result, that project is moving forward. When it comes to tariffs, I've looked at maps with arrows that show the negative impact, and no arrow is bigger than the state of New York. I live less than 100 miles from the Canadian border. My mother grew up in a town called Chateauguay, New York, which is 5 miles from the Canadian border. But you don't have to be 5 miles from the border to see the impact that already exists. Tariffs are necessary tools that can be used for national security, for protecting hardworking Americans and their jobs, and to grow that. But the current administration's approach lacks strategy and nuance, fails to recognize beneficial relationships between our friends, our allies, and our business partners like Canada. In Central New York and the Mohawk Valley, we rely heavily on trade with Canada for both imports and exports. Sometimes a product's production crosses the border multiple times, sometimes within the same company, and still tariffs would be imposed on those pre-manufactured products. Materials come from Canada, and our products go to Canada. We have multiple industries that are being impacted. In agriculture, lumber, metal production, as I mentioned, our building materials for an important plant that is coming into my district. There are double and triple tariffs that are hurting the bottom line. They're hurting jobs. Contracts are being canceled. Contracts are not moving forward in the negotiation process. Costs are being driven up. It makes absolutely 0 sense. So we have to get this right. The relationship between my district and Canada is so intricate, and it goes beyond just commerce. Canadians are our friends. They're often our family members. As I said, they're our business partners. And what newly elected Canadian Prime Minister Carney made remarks last night, and he called this the American betrayal. To hear stories of Canadians taking American products and turning them over so as to easily identify that product as American-made is unbelievable, something that I would not imagine in our lifetime. And it is an unnecessary act because of the unnecessary acts that have come out of this administration. The Prime Minister pledged to find new relationships and new agreements with reliable trade partners outside of the United States of America. And I do agree that describing this situation as a tragedy is accurate. My conversations with New York farmers, including dairy producers, owners of apple orchards, maple syrup producers, and other industries like lumber, the interconnectedness between New York State's economy and Canada is vital to our collective success. Items like fertilizer, potash, these come from Canada. 90% of our potassium, not just in central New York, but all across this country, comes from Canada. So we must use precision when it comes to our trade policy. Tariffs are basically a tax on American consumers and businesses, continues to drive up costs for